Hey, hi, hello there, welcome back to my monthly vlog where I try to read down my physical TBR. At some point, all the books on my shelves stopped feeling like things that I were actively reading and started to feel like a collection. Over the past couple months, I've used some themes to read books off of my shelves, but this month I'm doing a full spring cleaning and trying to test the best method to decide what stays and what goes. I have a huge stack of books that I've held on to for a long time. Each weekend, I'm going to use a different method to decide what stays and what goes. On the first weekend, I'm doing a hook test. I'm going to see how quickly a book can get me engaged. With just 10 pages, the books that I read that weekend have to make their case. On the second weekend, I'm going to read exactly 10% of each book. No more, no less. Doesn't matter if I'm in the middle of a chapter or not. We'll see if that 10% gives me a fair sense of the story. And then on the final weekend, I'm doing the 2 to 3 episode test. So I'll read 2 or 3 chapters to see if even more plot structure makes a difference. The goal isn't to give any book a full chance, it's to figure out how much of a chance any book actually needs. So let's start spring cleaning. Let's do some math first. I started March with 145 physical books on my shelves. Throughout the month, I read 5 of the physical books on my shelves, but I bought 6 more. So I'm starting April with 146 books. This month, I've pulled 18 books off of my shelves, books that I've been hemming and hawing about for some of them for years. We're gonna put all 18 of these books to the test one weekend at a time. I will read the designated parts of the chapters or the pages or whatever it is, and then I have to decide right then and there, am I going to keep it and put it back on my shelves, or am I going to get rid of it? And I think at the end of this month, my unhaul pile is going to be big enough to actually go take somewhere, which will probably mean that I will trade it in for more books. Maybe that's defeating the purpose. So as we head into the first weekend, we're going to start with the 10-ish page rule, or the hook test. The idea behind this, I didn't just come up with these. These are all ways that other people recommend to try to decide if they want to keep reading a book or not. When I was originally planning this idea, I was just going to use the same method, but I couldn't decide how much time or effort to put into the book. And so I started to do some research on what others recommend. And then I decided, I was like, well, let's test all the methods. Let's see what the best method is to decide if a book is worth keeping or not. The idea behind the hook test, or the 10-ish page rule, the 10-page rule, I'll stop calling it the 10-ish page rule. The idea behind the hook test, or the 10-page rule, by the time you read the first couple lines of a book, the author should have hooked you. They should have established several key elements, and you're going to see these key elements show up in other methods as well. So they should have established narrative, voice, and style, which is one of the things that people often rate books on. By the first 10 pages, you should be able to determine whether or not you like the way the book is written. You like the author's voice, the feel of how it's written. It should feel natural, it should feel compelling, or it should at least feel like something that is aligned with your personal taste. You should, as the name implies, you should feel some initial engagement. I know sometimes people make decisions based off the first line of a book, because we all know that that opening line is what is really needs to grab you in so that you keep reading. Within that first 10 pages, the reader should really be pulled in. There should be some intriguing tone, there should be something in the plot or the situations that are happening that makes you want to keep reading, even if we don't know all of the plot details within the first 10 pages. And then within the first 10 pages, there should be some reader curiosity. Especially, I would say by the end of the first 10 pages, even without a full understanding of the story, I should want to read more. I should have some questions that I want answered. I should have some curiosity in what's going on. I should have a character that I want to follow. Like, if I don't even know who my main character is by this point, then why am I still reading? Or maybe it's not a character, maybe it's a world. Maybe there's a bunch of characters in a world. So there should be something that has grabbed onto me and made me stay interested. The hook test is based on the idea that first impressions matter. And the same is true with books as it is with people. Many readers decide within the first pages of a book whether or not it's worth their time. I personally don't usually decide that early, but that's what I'm going to do this weekend. In publishing and in writing, authors often spend a great deal of time on those first lines and on deciding what that first chapter should be. It also mimics consumer styles. How many times have you been at the library or at the bookstore bookstore and you see something that catches your eye, but then you read the first couple pages to see if it's for you. That's the idea behind this first test. I feel like I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I don't often DNF. I am getting a little better at DNFing. I've DNF'd more books, I would say, over the past like year or two than I usually have before. And so all of these methods I think are going to really challenge me, but this one in particular I think is going to be the most challenging because it is, of all three methods, this is the method where you are reading the fewest number of pages. I do think this is a realistic method though, especially for a large number of books that I have just sitting on my shelves. Books that I keep coming back to that are taking up space that at this point I may have moved beyond. I do feel like I'm going to be able to decide whether or not to come back to that book within the first couple pages. All of the books that I've chosen are fiction. I think this would be a difficult method to maybe use with a nonfiction book. I suppose you could probably get the idea of an author's tone and writing style within the first 10 pages, but I don't know that you're gonna have that like hook in the first 10 pages. So I don't know that this would be a fair method for a nonfiction book, but maybe it would be. Maybe just right off the bat you would know whether it was like dry or boring versus like an interesting story. But I don't think you would be able to get a sense of the author's overall theme or trends. You coming up? Don't claw me. Yeah, lay down. I would say I suspect that thriller or mystery books might have an edge, or suspenseful, action-y kind of books. Those books that are written so that every end of every chapter is a cliffhanger, those books are going to leave you wanting a little bit more than maybe a fantasy book that is establishing some world building in the first couple pages. But I've definitely read a good number of fantasy books that are still able to make you feel interested in the world or make you interested in the characters really quickly, and I think that's important, especially if there's books on your shelves where you just can't decide if you're going to keep them or not. I do worry that with this method, I'm going to keep more than I'm going to unhaul, because I do worry that in my head I'm going to tell myself, well, this could be good. I am kind of in a place where I'm identifying the fact that there's not a lot of room on my shelves and I need to start making room, or I need to buy new shelves and find a place to put them. I need to pick up books, so you can't be on my lap because I have to hold my books. Sorry. Here's the 6 of the 18 books that I've decided to use. Some of these we've seen before. Geek Love by Catherine Dunn, I believe, was one of the contenders for my oldest, getting rid of the oldest books that I did back in January. In my head, this was the book that my mom owned, and then when she moved, or when I moved, I somehow accumulated it, and it kind of looks like it's that old. So that's why this is still around. Here and Now and Then, this one was on my recent March Are You Feeling Lucky mid-review books. This was a book that I was interested in when I was reading a lot of Blake Crouch and Andy Weir, and I wanted another author that had their writing style, their sci-fi writing style. And so I picked it up from the library and then lost it and paid for it and then found it again. The rest of these books haven't been in other videos. Other People's Things is a magical realism book that I had heard about randomly and don't even remember why I bought. I feel like it was probably really cheap and that's why I bought it. Gleanings is a YA sci-fi novel that is an extension of the Scythe series, the Arc of the Scythe books, which I really enjoyed. And I purchased this when it came out, thinking it was going to be a continuation or an offshoot of that trilogy, and then found out that it's actually a compilation of short stories or shorter stories written about a bunch of characters in the world. And so I think I've been putting this one off because I know it's not a full plotted story. So this one's going to be an interesting one to only read 10 pages of because they're all short stories. Other Birds is another, it's very similar to Other People's Things, where I heard about it. I believe it's magical realism as well. I probably found it relatively cheaply and purchased it, and I could not even tell you why. And then Mika in Real Life, I believe, is literary fiction, contemporary fiction. And again, it was a book that I had heard about, an interesting plot. I don't really read a lot of literary fiction. And so while it sounded interesting in the moment when I purchased it, it has not been as appealing to me. So I have quite the variety of genres here. It's the end of a long work week, so I'm not going to do this right this second. I wanted to introduce you guys to this month's project, and I'm gonna start tomorrow. I think I can take care of all of these over Saturday and Sunday. It's Easter weekend. I'm sure we'll do some fun family things this weekend. All right, until tomorrow. I wouldn't say that I was hooked by this right away. This is intended to be read after reading the Arc of the Scythe trilogy. If you are unfamiliar with the Arc of the Scythe series, it is a futuristic Earth where it's almost like a positive AI, positive technology story where in the future we have used technology and AI to solve the issues of poverty, hunger, people having purpose, and so we've created a world where nobody dies, but obviously there are problems with nobody dying, and so there are people that have the job of the scythe, which is to kill a certain number of people a year to help control the population. Gleanings are tales from other characters in that world. I would say the writing style is similar to Neil Shusterman's original works. It's not just written by Neil Shusterman. The opening poem was written by Joel Shusterman, it said, and it's written in collaboration with Jared Shusterman, who I'm pretty sure is his son and has written other books, amongst other authors. And the writing style is similar. The characters are characters that you are familiar with, assuming you've read the Arc of the Scythe. The pacing is similar. Like, it definitely fits in that vibe. I don't know that it is a necessary book, if that makes any sense. The Arc of the Scythe trilogy was really good. I really enjoyed it. It wrapped everything up very nicely. It's been a really long time since I read it, but I don't necessarily think this was a needed addition. I think that if you were really like obsessed with the world and you wanted to know more, this would be a good thing to have. It's not written poorly, it's not paced poorly, it is interesting information. I think for me, this is something I'm going to get rid of because I don't think that it is necessary, and there's not really anything pulling me back into this world enough to make me want to read it. So I think this one is a no for me. This one is interesting. It has a different vibe than I thought it would. I thought it would feel either cozy or older or not of this world, but it definitely has a little bit of humor to it. It definitely has a more modern vibe. They talk about texting. They make modern jokes. There's some modern humor in it, which I wasn't expecting. I'm interested. I'm intrigued by, the initial plot. This book is about a woman who can sense when objects aren't where they're supposed to be. And when I say she can sense, it's like magical, like they're almost like speaking to her. They do things to bring them to her attention. Her body physically changes when she is not moving things that she's supposed to, when she's not putting objects where they're supposed to go. And you can tell that it's gotten her in trouble because she was apparently in jail in the past. And so that's the magical realism aspect of it. I'm intrigued. You find out that she is trying really hard to not do this thing that just comes naturally to her. There's nothing in the first couple pages that you don't already know from the back, but the writing style is interesting. So I'm going to put this in unsure for now, and I'm going to think about it. Next up is Geek Love, which I've told you about in previous videos. This is a book about a carnival family, literally a family, a husband and wife and their children. They are either part of a carnival or they run a carnival. The husband and wife, they do things to themselves to create children that would be special in the carnival world. They give birth to fabulous freaks after they ingest drugs, insecticides, arsenic, radioisotopes, anything to make their babies special. Right off the bat, this one starts with the mom and dad of the story telling a story, and I'm not a big fan of how the dad talks. He speaks in a bunch of phrases of a time period or of a location that I cannot relate with, and it's difficult to follow. I bet if you heard it like on audio, it would be easier to follow. And so that was hard. But then it switched, like I was like, ugh, and it was only a couple pages in. But then it switched to our narrator. Our narrator is one of the kids in this story. And when she talks, it is much more straightforward and understandable. So I was like, okay, this is definitely an intriguing idea, but you know from the plot that it's going to be hard to read based on what it's about. I can tell this is going to be an emotional tale example, if you've ever read Water for Elephants, it kind of, it's like that type of story where you're hearing about a world that everybody is fascinated by, but in actuality is probably really deep and dark. As a person who is a mother and a parent, I can't even begin to imagine doing all of the terrible things that happen in the first 10 pages of this book and how this family, these children, are talked about. And so, how do I put this? I'm gonna put this in the unhaul pile. I'm gonna put this in the get rid of pile. Not because it's bad. It is definitely a difficult topic, which I think most people would expect. I could see reading this for a book club, like reading different chapters and having discussions, but I can't see myself being able to be in a place where I would want to read this because of the content of it, even just within the first 10 pages. So that's a very difficult one. Right off the bat, something I'm noticing about this method, even with just the first 3 that I'm getting through, this particular book is almost a series of individual tales. And while this method does allow you to get a sense of the tone and the writing style, you're not going to be able to get plot within you're not going to get a whole lot of plot anytime when you're just 10 pages in, but you're not reading the first couple pages of every individual tale. So that's something to keep in mind with one like this. But also those types of books don't always interest me as much. With this one, I already knew the plot. You don't really find out any new super gripping information in the beginning, but it did give me a sense of the tone, which was pretty good. With this particular one, it did let me know. I was kind of on the fence about it because I knew it was going to be a very emotionally difficult book to read. It did let me know the writing style, particularly, the variety of writing styles that's in it. I identified one that I didn't like, but it also just reinforced this idea that what is on the back is what is in this book, and I don't think I'm in a place where I will ever voluntarily want to read that without getting really angry. So I'm only 3 out of the 6 in, and I've already made some pretty good decisions, I would say, in the first 10 pages. Here and Now and Then is perfectly set up for this. Within the prologue, there's a mystery that's not even written on the flaps that you want to know more about. And then the prologue was pretty short, obviously, as prologues usually are. Continuing to the 10 pages, you get it's not a different perspective, but you find out more about what's currently happening. It's a time travel book, so there is some jumps in time within the book. It establishes the mystery even more. You get pulled even more into the mystery. The writing style is pretty straightforward. It's interesting. It's written in our main character's point of view. It's paced really well. This is about a man that works for a time travel agency but gets stuck in the 90s. He's from 2042, and ultimately the book is about him solving a mystery related to his family. That's obviously not established in the first couple pages. There's other mysteries that are established because of the style of book. It's a mystery, it's time travel, it's very fast-paced, and there's a lot in there that you want to know more about. I'm enjoying it. I could definitely see reading this. I think this is definitely a keep for now. It falls into a very, I don't want to say niche genre, obviously, but when I was reading a lot of Blake Crouch and Andy Weir, I wanted more like them, and this was a book that kept coming up, and so it's in that same vein, and I would say it still falls within that. So this is a keep. Other Birds is a magical realism book that definitely needed the full 10 pages. It seems very character driven. There isn't a very gripping, I don't want to say it's not a gripping hook. It's definitely not a first line kind of interest book. You have to get into the story to attach yourselves to the character and characters in order to want to read more. It's about a young girl who moves, I guess I don't even know how old she is. She's old enough to be on her own though, that is moving to this small town where her mother, who has long since been dead, used to visit regularly, used to take her when she was a young child, and this young woman is moving there. It almost feels like one of those settings for a romance book. It's like one of those magical romance books. This isn't a romance. It's about a girl that is learning about all the other tenants and what is going on in their lives. So it's definitely character driven. It's very descriptive. So you definitely needed more than a line. It's not bad. It's written well. There is some interest and intrigue. you want to know why she's moved there. You find out her mother moved from Cuba when she was very young. She died 12 years ago, and her father makes some comments about all her mother loved was money. And so you don't know a lot. So there are a lot of questions, but at this point, for the purposes of what I'm trying to do, it hasn't really intrigued me enough to want to keep it. If the point is me trying to clear things off my shelf, there's not enough of an interest that is really like, ooh, I definitely want to come back to this at some point. So it definitely doesn't read poorly. If you are more of a literary fiction or contemporary literature type of person with a little bit of magical realism, this would probably be a good book. But for me right now, I think I'm going to put it in the unhaul pile. This contemporary fiction definitely did a good job of getting me hooked in the first 10 pages. It starts out with a really emotional letter. Then we jump back in time a couple months, and our main character is fired from her job and is calling her friend. We find out a little bit about her relationship with her mother, and her daughter, who she gave up for adoption, is calling. And that all happened within 10 pages. And that pretty much is the plot of the book. So Mika in real life is about a mid-30s woman who has lost her job, is a disappointment to her parents. She's of Japanese heritage, and so she's not living up to their expectations. And when she was, I think it was 19, when she was a teenager, she had a child and gave it up for adoption, and the daughter has reached out to try to connect with her. I'm pretty sure it's going to have themes of, found family, identity, familyhood, coming to terms with your choices and stuff like that, which is this is not really the type of book that I would normally read. I bought it because it sounded interesting. It was getting some hype when it came out. I had heard about it in various places and I was interested enough. And in the first 10 pages, the writing style interested me. I think it's going to be a very character-driven story. It reminds me of Celeste Ng's Little Fires Everywhere. That book also did a really good job of hooking me. And so I think I'm going to keep this one. At the end of round 1 or weekend 1, at the end of the hook test, I've got 3 that I'm going to unhaul and 3 that I'm going to keep and put back on my shelves. So the point of this method was to see how well these particular books hooked me. I think even looking at the genre mix-up, so I had a historical fiction and a contemporary fiction, kept one, got rid of one. I had 2 sci-fi, one was YA sci-fi, one was adult sci-fi, kept one, got rid of one. And then I had 2 magical realism books and I kept one and got rid of one. So I think they are really based on the vibe of and the tone and the writing style and the information that is presented in those first couple pages. I do kind of think of it like you're in the store and you're going to read a couple pages and decide which one to buy. I liked that it was a quick process. This did not take a lot of time to do, so I didn't have to commit to reading big, huge, long chunks. And even if I wasn't really into some of them, I just kept saying, it's only 10 pages, you can give this 10 pages. And that really motivated me to, I know that sounds ridiculous to motivated to get through 10 pages, but because I knew it was so quick, I was definitely going to give it that time. I trust these decisions. I'm obviously going into this scenario with the intent of getting rid of books. I don't feel guilty or like I'm going to regret getting rid of these, and I am more interested and intrigued in reading some of these. So I would definitely use this method again. It's the only method I've tried right now, so it's the top one, yay! And we'll see how it compares to the other ones next weekend. it's not quite weekend 2, but the second method that I'm going to try, it's going to take a little bit longer. So I think I'm going to spread it out over a couple days instead of trying to do it all in one weekend. This method is the 10% rule. The idea being that I'm only going to read 10% of the book, no matter where it's at. If I'm in the middle of a chapter, if I'm in the middle of, I can't be in the middle of a word or anything like that, obviously, but 10%, I'm going to take the total number of pages, do some math, and then whatever the 10% mark of the book is, that's where I'm going to stop. Which for most books, 300 to 400 page book is going to be 30 to 40 pages. So I'm reading more than in the previous method, but I'm honestly, I'm looking for the same type of information as I was looking for in the hook test. The idea behind this method is that by the time you reach 10% of a book, you should have established some of the similar expectations that you're looking for in the 10-page rule, except obviously you're giving the author some more time to get there. You're giving yourself as a reader some more time to evaluate as well also. By 10% into a book, there's 3 critical elements an author should have established. 1, the narrative voice, the tone, the prose, the writing style. All of that should be established right out the gate, but definitely by 10%, you as the reader are hopefully figuring out if this is a book that you vibe with. The next thing that you're looking for is not something that is necessarily established in the first 10 pages. This is the inciting incident. In most regular story arcs, there is an incident or there is something that is disrupting the protagonist. There were some of the books in my last round that actually got to this point in the first 10 pages, or it was at least being hinted at, but definitely within the first 10%, there is something that should be happening to our main character or in our world within the first 10 to 15%. I'm only going 10% in. And then the last one is also something that you might be able to do in the first 10 pages, but you should definitely figure out within the first 10%. And that is our character agency. This is more, do you like the main character? Do you care about who the main character is? Maybe you don't like them. Maybe you love to hate the main character. Do you care about the people that you're reading about? That's something that you might need 10% of the book to get through. Again, there were some books in the first round that maybe if I had given them more time, I would have gotten there, but I'm sticking to the rules of the game here. I have 6 more books to use with the 10% rule. I've got a mystery, another mystery, a YA romance, a contemporary fiction, a YA fiction. This is another YA romance technically, and then a contemporary literature. I thought this had a sci-fi element to it, but it does not. I know some of these books you're probably like, oh my gosh, why hasn't she read this? But sorry, that's why we're here, people. So for a lot of these books, I'm looking at 300 to 400 pages. So I'm looking to read 30 to 40 pages of these books. So I'm giving them 3 to 4 times more pages to establish some of our key elements that we're looking for. Because this is going to take a little bit more time for some people, 30 to 40 pages is all you read in a night. I'm going to spread these out. It's a Monday. I'm going to start off easy. I'm going to start with this book, which I should really love in all honesty, considering my track record with Rainbow Rowell. And it's shorter. It's in the YA realm. And so I feel like it's going to be an easier read. In total, it's 328 pages. So I'm going to give it exactly 32.8 pages. I'm not really going to count out words and get to the 0.8, but I'll probably go a little beyond 32 pages. This is a young adult romance. It's about 2 young, they're both in high school, 2 young people that find each other. They both sound like they have, well, I shouldn't say both of them. From my first couple pages, my first 30 some odd pages, it seems like one of them has a lot going on in her life. She's recently changed schools. The other kid tries to keep to himself. You know, you have your typical high school struggles of fitting in, being interested in things. It takes place in the 80s, so I have to put that into context. And I believe they come together because of music based on the cover. I know Rainbow Rowell's writing style already. I've read quite a few of her other books. I read Fangirl and then went on to read all of the Simon Snow series. I think Yeah, there's 3 of those. So I read all of those. So I'm very familiar with her writing, and I really enjoyed that whole series and offshoot of books. And I know this is supposed to be another really good one. I do think this was a good one to read more because it goes back and forth between their 2 POVs. If I would have just read the first 10 pages, I would have gotten one of his POV, Park, and probably just one of Eleanor's. So reading more of this one, I got more chapters in each of their perspectives. There's not a big plot. This is definitely a character-driven novel. The synopsis talks about the 2 of them, explains that it takes place over the course of 1 school year. It says they're star-crossed, so I have a feeling some romance gets into there. Because it's a character-driven novel, you're not expecting a whole lot of plot in the first 30 some odd pages. Well, definitely not within the first 10. The 10th page would have maybe gotten me interested in Eleanor's background and what's going on there. I don't know how much I would like Park in those first couple pages based on his first interaction with Eleanor. So giving this some more pages was really cute. I think for now I'm putting this in the maybe pile mostly because I know Rainbow Rowell, I know her writing, I know how much she can like gut me. It's the first one I'm using this method off of. I'm gonna put it in the keep/maybe for now, and we'll see how I feel by the end of this week. So I'm gonna move on to a mystery, I think. I've got 2 in this pile. I've got Gillian Flynn, Dark Places, and Then She Was Gone. I actually think I'm gonna go with Then She Was Gone. I've read some of Gillian Flynn's other stuff. I've never read Elisa Jewell, and I know this one is supposed to be really good. Okay, it looks like it's in the 350-ish page range, so I'm gonna read 35 pages and some change, and I will keep you updated on this one. Okay, so I read about 35 and a half pages of Then She Was Gone. This particular book goes back and forth in time. It's about a young girl who was taken. I'm assuming why she was taken is revealed. Not only does it jump back and forth in time, but it also jumps back and forth in perspective. So the parts in the past, which are labeled then, are from the point of view of the girl, Ellie is her name, the young daughter. And then the present parts are from the mother's perspective. The mother is Laurel. It's almost like every other chapter goes back and forth in time. You know, it's a mystery, so by default you want to know more. The writing style, I like the back and forth in time. It makes you interested, it makes you intrigued, it makes you looking for clues because you know what's going to happen and you're trying to figure out why. In the present timeline, some new evidence has come to light 10 years later. Pretty much everyone else has, I don't know if moved on is the right words, but her other children have grown up and moved out. Her husband left her and has a life with another woman now. It seemed amiable. The mother is very, like, she can't get over the loss of her daughter, you know, rightly so. She gets called into the police office, into the police department because new evidence has been uncovered. So that's kind of the intrigue in the modern day plot. And then obviously in the past, it's from the daughter's perspective and you know she's the one that was taken or that's missing. And so you're trying to figure out what happened with her. I'm still kind of in the maybe about this. It's interesting. I like that in this set of books, I have 2 mysteries, 2 YA romance, and then 2 just general contemporary fiction. And so I think it's going to be interesting to almost compare those as well. I'm going to put this one in the maybe as well. I'm curious to see how it compares to the other one. I do read mystery every once in a while randomly, but it's not like my go-to. I don't usually keep them after I read them because once I've, read the book, I can't imagine or needing a reason to read it again. So they are books that I tend to read and then either give to somebody or donate or something like that. I'm interested, I'm intrigued. So I'm going to put this in the maybe and see how I feel by the end of the process. I know that I have 2 maybes right now. In the spirit of trying to keep things mixed up, I'm going to make Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid my next one. I also own the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I'm not as intrigued by her stories. My mom has read 7 Husbands and seemed to really enjoy it. Malibu Rising I purchased because it takes place in the 80s and it's a famous family party mystery kind of intrigue thing. So this is the next one I'm going to pick up. There's 365 pages, so I'm going to read 36 pages of this and I'll check in with you on this one when I'm done. All right, so I read exactly 36.5 pages of Malibu Rising. It's definitely a character story. This isn't my first Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my first Taylor Jenkins Reid in the Read verse. And right out the gate, it mentions Carrie Soto, which I haven't read, but I am familiar with. It doesn't seem like you need to know the Carrie Soto book in order to read this. I no, it's about tennis. That's about my extent of it. These are definitely character stories happening in a certain time and place. The writing style is really good. It grips you. It reminds me of the Celeste Ng book that I read, Little Fires Everywhere. I mean, it actually is very similar in that it starts by talking about Malibu and fires and how susceptible it is to fires. And you know from the back and from the beginning that this is about a house party with some siblings and the house catches on fire. The family are a bunch of surfers and there are four kids in the family. There's 2 sisters and 2 brothers. This was a good one to read 10% of because the first 5 pages is really just about the history of Malibu, kind of. I know that sounds boring, but it's more about how Malibu came about and why it's so dry and fiery. Like the first lines are Malibu catches fire. And then it seems like each section or chapter is a different amount of time on a different day. Then as I kept reading, so the first official chapter, which really doesn't start until about 10 pages in, is from the sister's perspective. And then about halfway through that chapter, we switch to 2 other siblings' perspectives. And then the next chapter, it's not really marked as a chapter, is another one of the siblings' perspectives. And then about 30 pages in, we actually go back in time to their parents. We go back to the 50s. So if I hadn't have given it, 36 pages, I wouldn't have seen all of those perspectives. Oh, this is a tough one in terms of whether to keep it or not. Reading more of the book definitely makes me want to keep it. Like I said, it is reminding me of the Celeste Ng book, which I did end up really enjoying. I am interested in the people. I'm interested in the writing style. I don't know that I would just pick it up though. Like I think there would have to be a reason. I can't see my mom wanting to read this. I have a lot of other books that I want to read. Oh, this is a tough one. I really don't feel like I should add it to the maybe pile. I did listen to a sample of the audio, and the audio is by one of my favorite narrators. She's the same one that does all of the Emily Henry books. She's got a very distinct voice. Julia Whalen, that's who it is. Julia Whalen is the audiobook narrator. Because I gave it 36 some odd pages, I am actually invested in all of the people. So I think I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to put it in the maybe. I'm going to keep it, and I'm a little bit more intrigued to put it on a future TBR. So I've done a YA romance, I've done a mystery. Those are still on the maybe pile. I've done a contemporary lit. I think let's repeat the cycle. Let's move on to our next YA romance. This is See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I believe most of what I've read of hers has been adult romance. Let's see, I have read Business for Pleasure. I want to read The X Talk. I've heard good things about that. Oh, Business or Pleasure, excuse me. But this does have pretty high reviews, and if I remember right, it has a bit of a time thing going on. It's 2 young people starting college. Barrett Bloom is hoping college will be a fresh start after a messy high school experience, but things start out really wrong. She's humiliated in her physics class. She botches an interview for the college paper. The next morning, it all starts over again. So it's one of those, she is repeating a really bad day over and over and over again. And I do like those kind of books because they have to fix them. I like movies like that. I like books like that. So I'm definitely going to give it a go. It is 419. YA books also read pretty quickly. So 419 would mean I'm reading 41, almost 42 pages. So hopefully because they're in college, it leans a little bit more new adult than young adult. Those I tend to enjoy a little bit better. So I'm going to start reading this one, and I will check in after my 41.9 pages. I finished 10% of See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I actually knew right away, or almost right away, that I was most likely going to keep this book, even though this is a YA novel romance about a young girl who's having a bad day and seems to have had a bad high school and is trying to start college off right. It has one of my favorite types of characters. A lot of times in not just YA novels, but in a lot of romance novels, the female characters that are struggling are kind of like wallflowery, and they are a little meek and shy. But our main character in this story, Barrett, is the best. She is not ashamed. She's very outgoing. She doesn't hold things back, and not in like a crude or crass way or anything like that, but she's very witty and snippy. She's being forced to roommate with somebody from high school that she doesn't get along with, and she's not mean to her, but she also doesn't, put up with things. She tries to also make her feel awkward, to make her new roommate feel awkward. She goes to this physics class that she was, I don't want to say inadvertently enrolled in, but she was enrolled in because she was like frantically scheduling, and she's planning on getting out of the class, and the boy that she sits next to is rude and she calls him out on it. She's definitely not a wallflower. You feel bad for her, not in, like, I'm reading another book right now where I feel bad for our main character and I want to yell at everybody because of it. Barrett, in this book, you don't feel so bad that you want to yell and shake her for her choices or decisions. I just want to read more to find out what's happening. I can't remember if I told you about this before. The book starts out Wednesday, September 21st, and that is the day that she's going to repeat. The first 10% didn't get me all the way through her first version of this day. I think it got me pretty close, but not quite. I just knew right away the writing style, the character, the pacing was really good. Books like this, the pacing can be off because you're experiencing the same day over. I'm kind of predicting some things that I think will happen when she repeats this day, but I'm intrigued enough that I'm definitely going to be keeping this one. I kind of knew that right off the bat. Next, I'm going to give Gillian Flynn, Dark Places, a try. I probably purchased this book shortly after reading Gone Girl. Gone Girl was such a success. I enjoyed Gone Girl, and I knew that Gillian Flynn had written some other mystery books, and that was probably where I acquired this one. But mystery is not my major forte, so I haven't really read it a lot recently. I shouldn't even say that. I used to read quite a bit of mystery, especially this is like a dark mystery. So I'm going to give this one a try, and then I will do a check-in after I'm done. This particular book is 345 pages. That means I'm going to read 34 pages and some change. I will check back with you after I've read a little bit of this. Whew, all right. So I'm not sure when she wrote this in relation to Gone Girl. It definitely is dark. I mean, it is called Dark Places. Our main character, Libby, is the only surviving member of a family massacre. Her brother is the one that I don't even know how I'm supposed to say supposedly. Her brother is the one that was tried and sent to jail for doing it. It was her mother, 2 older sisters, and then her brother was the oldest. There's no dad in the picture. The book starts out in the present time period, so Libby is an adult. I believe she's in her early 30s. She comes right out and says that she's angry. The first line, I have meanness inside me. So she went through this trauma, was passed around her family, probably caused a lot of problems. It sounds like she was not the easiest child to take in. Rightly so. She experienced like a horrific trauma and has essentially been living off of, I don't know if royalties is the right, like donations and royalties from this family event. Her brother is in jail. I think he's in jail for life, and they are in Kansas City, which is where she grew up. We then go back in time, and there's a chunk of the book from her mother's point of view. I don't know if it's the morning of the murder, but you learn a little bit about her brother and what's going on with her brother. And then we go back to Libby, and Libby, who is now looking for money, is basically trying to find ways to get money, to use this horrific event that she went through to get money. I do not like any people in this book. Libby, claims she's mean. She doesn't apologize for anything. She talks about being jealous of other people that were traumatized or tortured because now people are going to give them money and not her money. She talks about writing a book to try to get money and it didn't go over well and she's annoyed. There is a group that has reached out to her and told her they will pay her to come. She is meeting with other people that are part of the Kill Club. The Kill Club meets in Kansas City because they're both KC, and she's going there to meet people that are interested in all types of serial killers and murders and
Kill Club related things, but she's going as like the special guest and she's there to make money. She's not a likable person. You're not supposed to like her. And the other people in this Kill Club are kind of like creepy, skeevy kind of people too. There may be a twist. There is like an opening poem. It's supposed to be like a children's rhyme, like it reminded me of like a Lizzie Borden kind of thing that essentially tells you exactly what happened, assuming that it's real. I know from Gone Girl that Gillian Flynn is really good at having huge twists that make you go like, what? I think I'm going to depart with this book. I feel like I could probably Google what happened in this and be okay with that and not really feel the need to like immerse myself in all this like deep dark trauma that has not been dealt with. So that's where this one's going. So I've got one that I'm definitely keeping and one that I am going to donate, which is good. I was getting a little worried because I'm still kind of iffy about my first two. So last in this 10% round, I'm going to try to read some of this today. I don't know that I'll get to all of it today. My last one from this chunk is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. A lot of book clubs talked about this. There was a book club at my work that read it, and people that I know that read it encouraged. They were like, yeah, it was really good. I have tried to pick this up before. I listened to a little bit of it. It was, interesting. I think I thought it was going to be sci-fi or magical realism, and I've since figured out that it is not. It was one of those things that I purchased thinking it was one thing and then have since kind of realized it's another thing. It's already kind of on my meh list, but I'm going to give it the honest 10% so that I can, see how I feel. Let's see. It is 397 pages, it looks like. So 39, almost 40 pages, which seems to be pretty far into the middle of the third chapter, almost to the fourth chapter. So we'll give this one 10% and then I will check back in with you. Thought I would take advantage of the desk while it was still in my room. I'm moving into the third and final week of my experiment here. But before I tell you what's going to be different about this round, I have 3 boxes that I want to open that I've been waiting to open. It's been very busy. I haven't gotten a chance to open them at all. I'm going to do my aardvark. I'm going to do my aardvark first. The one of my owl crates I'm not as excited about because I know something's wrong with it. This is this month's aardvark. We're in the month of April, I just remembered. I'm pretty excited. So I got Love Galaxy. This is a sci-fi, I believe. Yep, science fiction, it even says on the back. It's kind of like a reality show. There's a girl, she's a trash collector, a dead-end job on a garbage planet. She is put on a competition show. It's a competition to see who's gonna marry the prince, essentially. But then I know there's a little bit of like a sapphic love triangle in this. And it just sounded fun. The Love Galaxy by Sierra Branham. And then here, maybe I can put it there, see if it stays. And then this one I'm really excited about. And then the next one I got is Japanese Gothic. And this is supposed to be a special edition. It's signed. Yeah, this is really pretty. And then this is the naked hardcover. It doesn't have any sprayed edges or anything. Aardvark's not quite that fancy. This is by Kylie Baker, who is the same woman that did Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang, that I still haven't read and I want to read. They're both horrors. I get the impression this is more of it's light on the horror. I think Bat Eater, is like really graphic. The plot for this is there's these 2 people. It's 2026 for one of the people and 1877 for the other people. They're both hiding out for different reasons. One doesn't remember how or why he killed his roommate, and the other one is a young woman that's a samurai in exile. So it's about these 2 people in exile. They're in exile at the same place at different times, but they keep seeing each other. It says one of these people is a ghost and one of these stories is a lie. Something is hidden beneath the house of sword ferns, and Lee and Sen, those are the 2 people, will soon wish they'd never unburied it. I thought it sounded interesting and like horror, but I don't know how gory it's going to be. I get the impression it's not going to be super gory. But yeah, so I'm excited about that one. So those were my aardvark picks. I got 2 owl crates. One is a book and one is like a grab bag. They had a birthday sale and I bought some things from their birthday sale. At this point, I don't remember which box is which. We'll find out together. They got all their little crinkle paper. Okay, this is the book. This is actually the March book. It was very delayed. I didn't get it until April. And after they sent it, they emailed everyone and said they had errors. So I don't know what they're gonna do. It's apparently missing a page. Like page 267 was not there and page 167 is there twice or something. It's Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. So it's the same woman that did Emily Wilde. It's about a woman who's losing her cat shelter, and so she finds another place to take all of her cats, and she's with a grumpy villain, wizard, warlock, I guess. He's grumpy. I don't know if he's truly a villain. It's just about their dynamic together. It's supposed to be a little cozy. I'm gonna keep it in the plastic packaging, I think, until I find out what they're gonna do with these, because my understanding is that they all had a misprint, and so until I hear more, we're just gonna leave this one as it is, but it's so cute. And it's funny because I was planning on reading that this month because I thought I was gonna get it last month, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, it still showed up in time, and then I got that email and I'm like, well, what the heck, I got some books from the library. So that means this box is my birthday order, like not my birthday, it was Owl Crate's birthday, and so they had a bunch of stuff on sale, and at this point I don't even remember what I got. So this is gonna be fun for everyone involved. Oh yeah, I got pins. I do like a good pin. And then here's a bookmark. I can't remember if I actually paid for the bookmark or if it just came with it. On the other side it says, I'd rather die on an adventure than live standing still. And if I remember right, this is like V.E. Schwab, Darker Shades of Magic. What else do I have here? Oh yeah, okay. I got a field guide to reading. It's just another reading journal. This is one I'm gonna try some different ones. This is more of a reading planner. And so I thought I would try this one on sale, like this one was on sale. And I'm gonna try some different ones to compare them. This is more of like you're gonna plan out what you're reading. There are places for book reviews. So currently I'm using a Fox, it's something Fox reading journal, and I'm liking it. It is a guided thing. I'm not to the point where I can have the time to make my own reading journal just yet. I would like to try some different ones. The one that I currently have is pretty basic. You like list the books for each month, then there's review pages for each book. This particular one has like monthly and weekly calendars in it, and that I really do like. In the past I've done it that way, and I personally like that. I've been kind of digitally using some monthly planners, but this one it's actually in there. And then I got 2 pins. This one says Proud Reader of Fantasy. And then I don't remember what the other one says. Oh, and then Proud Reader of Sci-Fi. Things that I wouldn't normally buy, but they were on sale, and so I felt like they were worth the money. On the flip side, though, I have now acquired 2 more books, and I've been reading a lot of library books this month, which is a good thing. Support your library. I'm not reading a lot of books off of my physical TBR because I keep reading library books. However, in my defense, one of the other reasons I'm reading library books is because there are these 3 books that I kept looking at over and over and over again, and I was like, I'm just gonna buy them, and then I would say like, no, I'm not gonna buy them, I'll wait. And then I just kept going back and forth, and I had taken my daughter to the library, and they were all sitting there, and I'm like, you know what, I'll get them from the library, and if I feel motivated enough to read them, then I'll see how I like them, and if I like it, I'll buy it. The one I enjoyed, but I'm not gonna buy it, and then the other one, one of the ones I just started, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm not very far in, and so that one I might actually buy. But let's talk about what we're really here to talk about. So I did 10%, which was roughly 30 to 40 pages for most of the books. I did 10 pages, which is obviously not a huge amount, and so for this round, for these 6 books that I have here, which you might notice there's some doozies in here, for these 6 books, I'm gonna use what I'm calling the 2-chapter rule. This is loosely based off of what some people call the 2-episode rule, or really, sometimes it's the 3-episode rule, which is something that shows up in anime and television shows. The idea being that you give a television show 2 to 3 episodes before you judge. And I think particularly with anime, I know anime, I feel like when my husband watches anime, it repeats itself a lot. So you got a 20-minute episode, maybe 25 minutes if you're lucky. I think they spend 5 to 10 minutes repeating themselves over and over and over again. And so really, you probably only have 20 minutes of actual content. So if you're only giving a show 1 episode, like how much do you really know? I think the flip side of that is nowadays television shows are like 45 minutes to an hour if you're watching them on a streaming service. So 2 to 3 episodes is like a movie, but whatever. Now, the purpose suggests so that readers or viewers, if you were doing this for a television show, they should know some key things within those 2 to 3 chapters. I'm just gonna say chapters from now on, but also think episodes in your head. So it allows time for setup, especially, in a book, that first chapter might be purely setup. It might be purely introductory background. And so if you go beyond that first chapter, then you can get into more of like the nitty gritty. There still needs to be a good hook, especially if you're doing more of a character driven book, then the hook might not come out in that first chapter there, or maybe the hook is in the first chapter and then there's some setup in the next chapter. The story arc really should come out by that second or third chapter. And then the way it's different from the other ones is the time commitment. So I've decided to exclusively do 2 chapters. When I was going through the books that I was looking at and I was figuring out where 3 chapters were, it was pretty close to, now it wouldn't be 10%, but it was close to 30 to 40 pages, which is what I read for the last one. For some of these books, it would be the equivalent of 10%. For some of these chunkers down here, it would not be 10%. And so I thought 2 chapters was somewhere in between. It's more than the 10 pages that I've read. It's less than the 35 to 40 pages that I read in the 10% one. So I'm doing 2 chapters unless there's some reason that I feel like I need to read one more. I wanted it to be different enough from what I've already done, essentially. So let me talk about the books that I have here. I also wanted some variety, and I think I have some decent variety. It's very heavy on like the fantasy side, I would say. There's a couple of them that if I decide not to keep, it will actually result in me getting rid of even more books, unhauling even more books, because it's situations where I bought multiple in the series without reading them, which I usually don't do. Maybe I was gifted multiple in the series. One of my not fantasies is Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. If you are familiar with Jodi Picoult, she's contemporary fiction, lots of morally gray issues. When I was probably in my mid-20s, I read quite a few Jodi Picoult, not like everything. Jodi Picoult has she's a very prolific author. She has lots and lots of works, and they all have some sort of morally gray thing going on with them. I don't read her works as much anymore, but this particular one was recommended to me by a friend who read it. Again, her morally gray situations really hook me in and usually anger me for some reason, and I hope that somebody sees the light and everything. But anyway, so that's why I have this one. And then I have In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I've read Under the Whispering Door. I've read The House in the Cerulean Sea, and I really enjoyed both of those. And so I purchased this one, which is ironic because I don't actually own either one of those. I've actually read those and really enjoyed them. And so I jumped out and bought this one without really reading much into it. If I remember right, this is a Pinocchio retelling with robots, which is why it's more in the sci-fi realm than the fantasy realm. And essentially, since I bought it and I kind of figured out that was the plot, I've been kind of about it. And I don't own the other ones that I've enjoyed by him. So this was an impulse buy that I'm now kind of questioning if I should have bought it. King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I've read the whole Shadow and Bone trilogy. I've read the Six of Crows duology. And so this was the next natural progression. However, I read a lot of those years ago, long before the show came out. I really, really enjoyed them, and I know what character this is about. And so I was really excited when I bought this. I purchased both of them in the duology. I feel like the time has passed. I feel like it's been too long. I think the rest of that world is not as enticing to me anymore, and I've also heard some mid-reviews about this. I'm sure you've already noticed what this was. Priory of an Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Heard really great things about it. This thing is ginormous. How many pages is this? If I end up reading this would probably work for the cat squasher on my Our Fantasy card. How many pages is this? Oh my gosh, there's a whole dictionary at the end. No, this one doesn't even count for cat squasher. It only gets to 800. I don't think I need to explain why I've been intimidated to read this one or why I've been putting this one off. It's taking up a huge portion of my shelf. I need to bite the bullet and I need to try it. I'm still very much interested in reading this. I'm not usually super intimidated by large books, but this one is quite the chonker, but I've heard really good things about it. Oh, I should tell you what it's about. I know it's related to dragons. There's a female monarchy and there's dragons and there's a war. It looks like based on the back. I'll let you know one more when I read it. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I bought this when I used to work at Barnes & Noble. I think that's when it came out, honestly. This has been out for a while. It sounds really interesting. It's about 2 magicians in 1800s England. I have since read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I didn't really like the story. I know, don't come at me. Everybody loves Piranesi. I didn't get it. I didn't like the story, but I did like the writing. The plot in theory sounds interesting. I kind of forgot I owned it. I like unearthed it. And it's another doozy. This one's 780 pages, so not quite as long as Samantha Shannon's book. After I read Piranesi, I was kind of like, oh, do I really need almost 800 pages for this story? I feel like it's going to be slower the same way her other book is, and I think that's going to kind of turn me off from this. All right, and then last but not least, I have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Dragons. There's like a Dragon Academy, I think. I know people love this book. I jumped on this bandwagon when I was in my Sarah J. Maas, like reading all of the romantasy, and I have the first 3 of these. Obviously, like not all of them are out. At first, I started to put them off because I heard that you should read them one right after the other, and then when I heard there were even more coming, I was like, well, I might as well wait. And now that I have read more fantasy, I'm wondering if the ship has sailed in the romantasy department. I have no problem with romantasy. It can scratch an itch. It can be kind of mindless reading if that's what you're in the mood for. I've heard the negative reviews about the second book, but some people are still reading the third one, and so on and so on. There's people that I work with that highly recommend this book. These are my contenders. So I've got 4 fantasy, a sci-fi, and a general fiction, a lit fiction, contemporary fiction. So I'm gonna make my way through these over this weekend. I'll see you guys when I'm done reading all of them, or I'll see you as I read through all of them. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. The King of Wolves duology is a companion duology that is in the Grishaverse, the Grishaverse. The main character of, or one of the main characters of this duology is a character that shows up in the second or third, I can't remember which, it's been a while since I've read it, the second or third Shadow and Bone trilogy. It's a king from a very tenuous area that has a secret monster hidden inside of him, and he doesn't have control of the monster, and the monster only comes out at certain times. It's already a tenuous situation because it was a land, this is what I've gotten from this particular book, it was a land that was divided until a miracle occurred and a bridge was formed that allowed half of the population to be saved and to connect the kingdom. And he's the current king of this land, and he's trying to get a wife and make alliances and basically unify his land. However, he's cursed, and at least that's what you're assuming. He's cursed, and there is a monster that emerges, and he doesn't know what happens when the monster emerges. He doesn't have control of it. He's not conscious. And so obviously, how do you marry somebody and live with them and not have this come out? And then when it comes out, how do you rule a land when all of that is happening? I believe, based on what I remember, that this particular book takes place before many of the events of Shadow and Bone. I always enjoy Leigh Bardugo's writing. In addition to reading the 5 Grishaverse books, I've also read Hellbent and Ninth House. I'm really excited for the next one in that series to come out. I read The Familiar, which I know many people didn't enjoy, but I actually really enjoyed it. The style of this writing sends me back into the Grishaverse. Even though it is technically YA, her writing doesn't read YA. This could be right up there with numerous other fantasy books. It has been a while since I've read these, and so I know I'm supposed to know some of these characters, but I don't remember all of the details. I know I'm supposed to know about the world, and there was a part at the beginning that looked at the different categories of Grisha and how they control different aspects of magic, but it has been a while. I am pretty far removed. And so some of it was coming back as I was reading it. One thing that I forgot, I remember it from Six of Crows, but I kind of forgot about the Shadow and Bone trilogy. A lot of the books in this series are multi-POV. And not only is it from a different point of view, sometimes one of the point of views you're reading from is not happening in the same part of the world as the rest of the story. So it does help you read quickly. It does help you stay engaged in the story. So this is a good one to definitely give more than 10 pages because you at least get through multiple points of view. And in fact, in this particular book, the first chapter is from a character that is not even part of the story. And so you would have no idea what that first character had anything to do with anything if you only read the first 10 pages. The second chapter is it's not from the main character, it's not from the king's point of view, it's from his assistant, maybe is how you would describe it, his friend. So again, like you're seeing things from her side of, her point of view. And then I noticed that when you get to chapter 3, it's another character that's mentioned on the back. All that being said, I think I've decided, I am far removed from this world. I didn't really feel like that particular character needed additional stories. I can't see myself rereading the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I could see myself rereading the Six of Crows duology, but I feel safe letting go of this one. Because of that, I'm also going to go ahead and get rid of the second one. I'm actually going to try In the Lives of Puppets. Try to get some sci-fi. A lot of these are fantasy, so I know I'm going to end up reading a lot of fantasy. So I'm going to give In the Lives of Puppets a glance next. I can definitely see his style in the writing of this book. It is reminding me of House of the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door. Those are the only two of his books that I've read, although I know he has many, many other ones. Just within the first 2 chapters, I'm not 100% invested in the characters. I don't know if it's because I can't get over the fact that it's a fairy tale retelling. I don't have a problem with fairy tale retellings, but I like when fairy tale retellings seem different. TJ Klune has a very unique writing style, and in the other books that I've read by him, it worked for those books. For this particular book, it seems very kitschy and childlike. It doesn't seem he went beyond the fairy tale. I mean, obviously, I haven't read the story, so I don't know how much the story changes from Pinocchio. It's very different. It's about a man that lives out in the woods and for some random reason ends up with a young boy that he raises, and the man is also like a tinkerer. He builds, he puts things together. We jump forward in time. We find the boy has grown up and he also has become like a tinkerer. They have robots. They put things back together. We don't really know a lot about the world. A lot of it doesn't make sense. I can't place the time period. I can't place this is post-apocalyptic or if this is just a completely different world. There's the woman that leaves her baby. There's no explanation for that. And again, all of that could come out later. But for me, within the first couple chapters, it just doesn't make sense. I haven't really bought into the characters. I do like the robots that he interacts with. They're a little bit of humor, but it's almost like all of it is just kind of over the top for me. It's really, I don't know, it's just not working. It's hard to explain. It's fairy tale-esque, but almost too much like a Disney childlike version of the story. And so it's not different enough. It doesn't feel adult enough that I'm interested and engaged. So I'm going to take a pass on this one. To mix things up, I'm going to go with Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. I used to read her all the time. I'm very familiar with her morally gray issues. It's about a Black nurse. She's an L&D nurse, a labor and delivery nurse. Her first patient of the day when the book starts is a husband and wife that just had their son, and they happen to be white supremacists. And so they throw a fit. And then I know there is a court case at some point in the book, so I'm unsure of what happens. The story starts out and we get a little bit of background about Ruth. We hear about her family. She grew up in the late 60s. Her mother was a housekeeper for a very wealthy family. And then she watched her mom deliver a baby to the woman that she worked for. It was an unexpected delivery. And that's kind of what piqued her interest in becoming an L&D nurse. And then we jump very far in the future. One of the great things about Jodi Picoult books is they are multi-POV. So the first 2 chapters are in Ruth's point point of view. So I went ahead and read a little bit into the husband's point of view because I felt like that was important. The husband, Turk, is one of the other points of view. I don't know if there's any other ones. I just happened to notice Ruth and Turk. He's the one that I'm obviously going to struggle the most with. In other books of hers, Jodi Picoult's, I do feel like I could understand both sides. I think I'm really going to, I don't think I'm going to have any way to connect with or agree with or side with or feel compassion, question mark, towards the other side of this book. I think that's why I have struggled to pick this book up. I'm very torn on this one right now. I'm engaged in Ruth as a character. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to handle of Turk. Maybe what I'll do, I'll kind of skim through it and see how much of Turk's perspective there is. Maybe that will kind of be my deciding factor. Right now, I'm going to put this one in the maybe pile. I guess it's my first maybe. I've already gotten rid of quite a few books. This one's an unsure right now, leaning towards keep, but we'll have to come back to this one. Oh man, I got a lot of fantasy left. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do Fourth Wing next. So I know for you, it hasn't been very long, but for me, it's been a couple days since I've checked in. I've actually read 2 more books, and I will kind of explain why. I was trying to mix up my genres, so I didn't feel like I was making decisions based on books that had very similar genres, but there were 2 books that I ended up kind of deciding it might be a good idea to actually judge them similarly. So the last time I saw you, I was getting ready to jump into Fourth Wing, and I legitimately thought that I was going to go in and I was going to read this and it was going to be like junk food. And it was. My suspicions were correct, but much like junk food, it was very easy to read, very easy to consume. It's very straightforward. It does not involve high levels of thought. And I was hooked in the story within the first 2 chapters. The first chapter, not so much. The first chapter was very telly, and I was even trying to be super critical when I was reading it. It definitely has its flaws. In addition to being very telly, it seems like parts of it are modern language, but it's not a modern time. Rebecca Yarros isn't even necessarily super creative in how she's being telly. She's trying to be subtle, but it's a very obvious way. But by the end of that second chapter, I was interested in what was happening. If you've been in a cave and you don't know what Fourth Wing is about, it is the first book in the Empyrean series. I think it's Empyrean is the name of the whole series. I think it was originally just supposed to be a trilogy. Not only has it been confirmed to be more than a trilogy, but last I checked, I think it was going to be 5 books, which is honestly why I didn't start reading it. I have the first 3. They're all on my shelves. The overall plot of the first book is that we have a young girl who is being essentially forced by her mother to join the Dragon Academy. This seems to be a world where on, I believe it's conscription day is what they call it, you have to commit to something. Our main character wanted to sign up for the scribes to be an academic, but her mother is I don't know if her mom's the general. Her mom's a bigwig in it. Everybody knows her last name. Her sister is also a bigwig. Everybody knows who her sister is too. And she is forced to join this academy where you learn to ride dragons and fight with dragons. There is a lot of battles and turmoils. It's a very cutthroat world. Their first task is to walk across this bridge. It starts pouring down rain, and nobody really cares that these people are gonna die and fall off of this bridge. It's kind of like, if you can't do this, then how do you plan on riding a dragon? There's lots of hints of wars from the past, rebellions. There's a group of people that are part of the academy, but very much against the ruling body. Like I said, it's very telly in the first 2 chapters, but you don't necessarily understand all of it. And then there are some characters that already don't like our main character purely because of her name and because of her family history. So there's already some potential enemy to lover relationships that are being established. And it really is just a mindless, easy read. I didn't hate it enough to put it off to the side. So this is where I'm very torn with this because it is interesting. It is, I don't know if even interesting is the right word. I could see just reading this to read it, reading it to know what the hype is about, essentially. I could get rid of it and get it from the library. If I'm ever really interested in it, I will probably wait to read this until more of them are out. When I read the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas, I read the first one and knew immediately that I wanted to read the other ones, and so I think I bought them all and I read the first 3 back to back. I could see reading that like those, where you kind of just get like sucked into it. As a comparison novel to see what I really thought, I decided to move on to The Priory of an Orange Tree. I knew this was another book about a female dominant society where dragons were involved, but I knew it was of a different quality. And I could tell right out the gate. Chapter 1, I was really interested. It was much more of the type of books that I like to read. It was giving me the intrigue and the visuals without being too telly, and I was like, yes, this is what I want. But then I got to the second chapter and they started throwing a bunch of names and history at me without me knowing, which is totally fine. I'm totally okay with that. Epic fantasy books often do that. Sometimes you just keep reading and you don't know what's happening and you eventually figure it out. But when you're just reading 2 chapters, that can be difficult. If you're getting all of this information and it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, then hearing all of these names can be very like, oh no, what's happening? I did kind of go back and skim through. I had to do a lot of back and forth of like, okay, are we still talking about the same person? Is this interaction with the same person? And I was still intrigued. I still knew what was going on. And so again, I was torn because I was like, okay, this is the type of book that is going to really need a lot of brain power. It's the opposite of the Fourth Wing books. The Fourth Wing books are going to be mindless. I can turn off and just like listen or just read and not have to worry about following things a whole lot. Whereas Priory of an Orange Tree is definitely going to involve some annotating and some note taking, and time is going to be involved in this process. Fourth Wing is we're following one character going through some journey or whatever. Priory of an Orange Tree is going to follow 3 different characters. They're all over the world. There's a lot going on in this world. The first chapter in Priory of an Orange Tree is from Tane's point of view. I believe that's how you say her name. And she's on the east. She's walking the shores, the beaches, if you will, and smugglers have dropped somebody off on the beach. You don't really know why, but she helps this person and smuggles him into an area where you're not supposed to. And the whole chapter is not even told from her point of view. We move to another person's point of view, but it hooked me. I was interested. It wasn't a lot of name dropping and telling, and I wanted to know more, but in a nice subtle way. Then we move into the second chapter. Now we're hearing from Ede's point of view, and we are in a castle. And Ede is somebody that has made her way up in the world. We've moved to the west, so we're no longer in the east, so we're all the way on the other side of the world. Ede is working in the castle, and she's working in the castle in many ways. The queen, there are attempts at her life, and Ede is protecting her. There's other royal visitors, and she's the person that keeps everyone in order. And that's where we got very name droppy, and I was kind of confused, and I would probably, like, when I truly sit down to read this, I will have to go back and like do some annotating and some focusing and stuff like that. They are very, very different stories, and it wasn't like one of them didn't really make me feel like I didn't want to keep the other one. The benefit of Priory of an Orange Tree is that it is a single solitary book. There is a benefit to keeping this one because it's like a one and done. It's a quality story. I know it's going to involve more time and commitment. There's nothing wrong with that. I like that with books, you know. Right now I'm leaning towards keeping the Priory of an Orange Tree and maybe potentially unhauling all 3 of the Empyrean books, because these to me feel like books that I will read and then that's it. And I don't even know that I would want to keep buying them. Part of me is kind of hemming and hawing. I'm definitely keeping the Priory of an Orange Tree. So that's where I'm at now with these. I will make a final decision by the time I wrap up this whole video. I do have one more book for this challenge, and that's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This particular edition has seen some damage. I've had it for quite some time. I bought it back when I used to work at Barnes & Noble. It is about 2 competing magicians. We are in 1800s England. I believe it's a world where people know magic exists. It has faded, but there is a practicing magician that still remains. It looks like the book is broken up into different volumes, one purely by Mr. Norrell, one by Jonathan Strange, and then there is a a third volume by another person who I don't know. It says John Usglass. So I guess I'm judging this more on writing style. I wonder if this book is so thick because there's way more information in here than we need, if you will. So I think I'll be able to figure that out within the first couple chapters. After this, I'll wrap up the video and I'll give you a final unhaul. This is where I'm at kind of standing. Okay, so I read 2 chapters of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and I'm not hooked. I feel like I just read 2 chapters and barely got anywhere in the plot. It is a lot of excess dialogue. There's a lot of characters that I don't think are going to have much to do with the story. We met Mr. Norrell. It definitely did not hook me in the first almost 30 pages. And I do feel like by the end of this book, it's going to feel like it was a lot of words to get at a plot. In my opinion, I was already kind of leaning towards not keeping this, but I definitely feel much more inclined to not keep it now. It didn't get me enough to make me want to read it. It's April 24th, 4 weeks into April. April's very long. And I've gone through all 3 methods. I read bits and pieces of 18 different books and made my decisions. Before I talk about the books, I want to give you my overall impression of each method. One weekend, I read exactly 10% of each book, which was roughly 30 to 40 pages of the books that I read. One weekend I read 10 pages. It was the hook to see if the hook interested me. And then I read 2 chapters of each book that I was interested in. I think, in all honesty, 10 pages was probably enough. I do think there were a few exceptions where reading more than those 10 pages was important, especially if a book has multiple points of view. There were a few books where if I had just read 10 pages, I would have either only read one point of view or I would have had a very skewed view maybe on the book. But more often than not, I really do think 10 pages was enough. I think I went into a lot of these books. I mean, I picked these books for a reason. They're books that I've had on my shelves, many of which I was already leaning towards like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna read this. Let's do something about it. But I wasn't ready to just like purely give up on them. I wanted to give them a try. And for a lot of these books, I did know within 10 pages that I was gonna keep it or I was going to get rid of it. When we moved into the 10% realm, I didn't need 10% of the book. I don't think there were any books where 10% made me change my mind. I think there were some books where 2 chapters probably made the difference. I would rank them as 10 pages, 2 chapters, 10%. If you have a huge number of books that you want to get through, 10% is going to take, that's a long time. I don't think you realize like 10% of a book is 30 to 40, maybe even 50 pages. And so if you're trying to go through a whole bunch of books and you're reading 30 to 50 pages of each of those books to try to decide if you want to read it, that's a huge time commitment. So I guess it kind of depends on what your end goal is. 10 pages was usually enough. I think if you were in those 10 pages and you were hooked and you kept reading a little bit more, that right there kind of tells you that's really all you need. So that's where 2 chapters was kind of the nice in between. But also there were some books in this last round when I did 2 chapters where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to read another chapter of this. Like I had already made up my mind, but I was committing to the exercise. So let's talk about some potential surprises. I'm gonna go through my unhaul pile. In the Lives of Puppets, this was one where I read 2 chapters of it. Now that it's been a couple days, I'm still okay with getting rid of this. It wasn't as nuanced and unique as his other stories. This one I'm okay unhauling. King of Scars, which is part of the Grishaverse. I still have the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I still have the Six of Crows duology. I don't know if I will ever reread it, but I do remember enjoying them. This, however, I kind of don't feel like was necessary. I think I bought it when I was like on the hype, on the bandwagon, and I wanted to still be in that world. Because I'm getting rid of this, I'm also getting rid of, I have the second one. So that's 2 more in that pile. These 2, so these were both thriller mystery type books. And I need to start getting these from the library because even if I read and enjoy these, I can't ever see rereading them. I Googled the end of this one. I would have been like, oh my gosh, okay, by the time I got to the end. And this one, like, time has passed. I don't care enough to go on. So then She Was Gone and Dark Places. I'll be getting rid of both of those. Geek Love, there was nothing wrong with the writing style, very interesting plot, but this would be really hard for me to read. The emotional impact of it, some of the choices that characters were making right away, I don't think I can connect with, and this would be really hard for me to keep reading. I was glad I only had to read 10 pages of this, so this one I'm definitely okay getting rid of. I've tried Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow before. I know it's supposed to be pretty good literary fiction. It's definitely character driven, but I think I would read it and then not really think a lot about it after time passed. So I'm also gonna let this one go. Similar with Other Birds. I think this could go either way. I think I could read this and I would be like, oh, okay, that was kind of cute, but I'm okay getting rid of it. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything big and major with this one. Gleanings by Neil Shusterman. This is part of the Arc of the Scythe trilogy, which I really enjoyed. These are short stories that are related to characters in that. Similar to King of Scars, I almost feel like this was another unnecessary set of books, and so I'm okay getting rid of this. I still have the Arc of the Scythe trilogy. I could see rereading those, reading them with my daughter, something like that, but I'm okay getting rid of this one. And then my most recent one, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This is a lot of words. I have no problem reading big books, but I have a feeling I would read this and say this needed an editing job. This would be very slow, being in this world for a very long time. I could see myself just being like, oh my gosh, let's get on with it. I've had this for a really long time. I think it's time to just let it go. So speaking of character driven, moving on to my other pile, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. These are people that I don't care enough about to keep reading. The people in this one, I can't stop thinking about the 4 characters that I read about in just the 10%. It doesn't even matter what the story is about. I felt like I was in that world with those people and they pop up in my head even after only reading 10%. So I'm surprised this is one I'm gonna keep. I guess that's just the magic of TJR's writing. See You Yesterday. This is just a YA romance, which I really didn't think I was gonna keep, but I absolutely loved our main character. She does not fit the typical archetype of your awkward new adult starting college in situations where she's trying to do things differently than she did in high school. And I loved her and I want to read more about her. So this is going in my keep pile. Mika in Real Life was another one. I'm glad I gave it the pages that I did. It was written in an intriguing way. This would be a quick read, but still have some good emotional plot points that would keep me interested. So I'm gonna keep this one. It tugged at my heartstrings. Maybe that's a good way of putting it. Here and Now and Then by Mike Chen. There's times when I'm really looking for like Blake Crouch or Andy Weir, and I've already read a lot of their stuff, and I think this is a sci-fi book that will kind of scratch that itch. I do tend to end up reading a lot of time travel books. It's a running joke with my mom and I because I suggest a lot of time travel books for her. And I think this is gonna scratch that itch when I need it. And it was intriguing. I was interested in what was happening. And so I'm gonna keep this one. The Priory of the Orange Tree. I know this is going to be dense. This is going to be epic. I'm going to really need to focus when I read this. I'm going to need to annotate, but I also know I will read this. I will enjoy it. I don't need to read like 5 more afterwards. I'm going to keep this one for when I'm really in the mood for like an epic, in-depth thinking type of book. Maybe when I get to the point where I can read multiple things at a time. This one's going to stay on the shelves. Now I have some other ones that I might be changing my mind about. So Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. I was back and forth on this one. I was interested in the story. I knew that reading Turk, the white supremacist's point of view, is going to be difficult the same way that reading parts of Geek Love are going to be difficult. And so that's why I was kind of going back and forth, because 2/3 of the book are going to be from other points of view. So really his point of view, which is difficult to read, is only 1/3 of the book. I think I'm actually going to put this in the donate pile, mostly because since I've walked away from it, there's not a lot that has been pulling me back to it, unfortunately. So that alone kind of tells me that this needs to go in the unhaul pile. And I'm kind of leaning towards that for other people's things, because it's been weeks since I've read this one, and I do remember bits and pieces of it, and there is something about it that makes me wonder, like, maybe I do want to pick this up. Well, I'm going to explain what I'm going to do with this one in just a second here, because it is closely tied to my last one, Fourth Wing. I read Fourth Wing, bits and pieces of Fourth Wing, it was 2 chapters, right before I did Priory of an Orange Tree, and I thought that reading them back to back was going to help me make my decision, and it didn't. And so I think with this book and other people's things, I'm going to put them on my shelves with the caveat. I'm hoping to, in the near future, create a list of books with a clock, books that are on my shelves that if I don't read a year after I film it, we'll say, then they're gonna go. And I think that's where these books are gonna go. Books with a clock on them. They can be on my shelves until a year from the video that I film. And so I'll have a record that says if I haven't read this in that year, then they're going no matter what. Because I do kind of keep thinking about them. I am still interested in them, but they're still not to the point where I want to like bump them up the TBR list. So look for a video in the future related to that. I thought it was interesting to kind of compare the different genres, looking at two fantasy books, you know, putting them head to head with a similar test, doing the same thing with some sci-fi books and some YA books. I didn't really see a pattern in genre. It really came down to writing style and how well the hook or the plot or the characters, like how well that got me. I'm keeping some literary books. I'm getting rid of some literary fiction books. I'm keeping some fantasy. I'm getting rid of some fantasy. I think me as a reader, like I really do think there were other factors at play other than just like the types of books that we were talking about. I'm getting rid of 11 and keeping 7, but 2 of them have a clock on them. This accomplished what I wanted it to accomplish. I am making room on my shelves for books that are coming in, and I kind of like this idea of having a clock on some other books. If I were to do this in the future, I think I would definitely just read 10 pages. If you're talking about large stacks of books, 10 pages, I would say 10 pages to a chapter. That's probably a better way of putting it. Sometimes 10 pages is a chapter. I would probably give a lot of books at least a chapter before I decided. But I do feel a little bit more confident in being able to decide to get rid of a book based on an early decision. Whereas I used to very much like finish a book even if I wasn't enjoying it. I have since learned that that is not always the case. So if you are kind of like me and you're trying to clear out your TBR, what I would recommend is go through your books. I personally actually liked almost putting them head to head, like genre head to head style, because it allowed me to compare writing and plot and character intrigue. I would try to skim through the books. If it's a multi-POV book, I would give it 2 chapters so you at least hear from different points of view, or maybe 3 depending on how many points of view are written in each chapter. I also did sample some audiobooks. Sometimes the audiobook was like, oh, I knew right away like if I did or didn't like the audio narrator. I liked doing this with variety personally. I think it would have been a lot more difficult if I was only doing fantasy or only doing sci-fi or something. So doing this with variety was definitely helpful. And then I would do at least 10 pages and up to 2 chapters. If you feel like getting through a chapter or 2 chapters is a slog, then you've kind of already answered your question. And if you know within 10 pages that something has you hooked, then put it to the side and decide to keep it. That's it for April's Read Down My TBR. If you have any thoughts on any of these methods, or if you have your own method that I didn't try, let me know, leave it in the comments. I would love to know some other ways that people decide to DNF or get rid of a book before they unhaul it. These are probably going away sooner rather than later, so don't even try to convince me to keep them. I tend to not keep things around for very long. I always like to know that people are watching, so give me a like if you enjoyed this and subscribe so you don't miss my next video in this series. In May, I'm going to be trying to make my way through the books in my subscription boxes. Until then, happy reading!